Yes, it's Destination Newry. It is the morning programme. Rowan Hand is my name. I have the privilege and indeed the pleasure of being your host for another half an hour. And that space is occupied by my next two guests. Helen McKevitt, how are you?
Good morning.
You're most welcome. And Michael McKeown.
Thank you. I'm pretty well this morning.
It's good to see you. You're both very welcome indeed. And we're talking about the story of the post office in Newry, written by your dear husband, who's now passed on, Helen, and it's a substantial work. And Michael, your expertise has been brought into play in making this happen. Talk to me about it.
Well, about 6-7 months ago, the daughter-in-law, Linda McKevitt, I forget what Linda's maiden name was, Linda Hollywood, she came to me and said that she'd been referred to me as someone who might help publish a book.
Yes.
Having published a couple of other books before. And I said, well, what's it about? You know, you usually suspect that a book could be about any sort of daft nonsense.
Yes.
And she said, she showed me a photograph of the author.
Yes.
And she said, this is my father-in-law, Sean, and he wrote this in the last year after he'd been diagnosed with the cancer. And I looked at the photograph and I looked at the book, and the photograph just hit me because I knew this man, but I did not know that he had died.
Oh goodness, yeah.
And I just felt that pit, said, oh my goodness, you know, the strike of grief, because he was the loveliest man. He was our postman in Mary Street.
Are you joking?
For about how long we've been in there, 14 years or so.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a postman that come in and dumped things on the counter. Excuse me if any of you do that, but Sean never dumped anything in the counter. He never left without an hello or a smile or whatever. And after a number of years, when I got familiar with him, I realised that he was an Irish speaker and an Irish teacher.
My goodness.
And he was doing this at night tech. So when he'd come in, I would always take the opportunity.
Are our phones, I'm going to interrupt you. Andrew is drawing my attention to a phone. Have we all our phones off?
Oh, sorry.
I think maybe we can make sure of that now. So now hold your train of thought there where you were.
You must have been there.
Yeah, we're okay now. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew is technically very, very astute, as you will observe.
So this
was a particularly caring man.
He was an exceptional man, and they never, but you would be, you know how, when I was asked to describe him, I said, if I were walking down Hill Street or Mary Street and Sean was coming on the other side of the road, I crossed over not to miss him.
Not to miss him. That's a great compliment. A great compliment.
Once she showed me the photo, I says,
I'm trying to find his photograph here. Will you find the photograph for me? And then we keep talking, Michael.
Well, we had
and Helen will get the photograph for us there.
He always had another word of Irish for me whenever I would say something. But I would like make sure I had something different to say.
He's drawing you on.
So I would try and say something or look up something in Irish. So whenever we would meet him, I would say, tell me that word again.
Thank you so much.
That's back in the day.
And so therefore it was like beyond the relationship with the postman. Yeah.
I know this man.
Yeah, you know him too?
Going, yeah.
And I was so surprised because I had been probably not there a lot myself because I was away publishing another book.
Yeah.
And I was so surprised. And then when she showed me it, I says, I'll take it home and read it. I'm still a wee bit wary, you know. I wonder what he'd written about, you know. But when I got it home to read it, I said, this is wonderful. Yes. Because this is an aspect of Newry, which is a narrow aspect, but it's something that affects everybody's life.
Yes.
And you get things become, the things that work well become transparent to him and are taken for granted. And the biggest one is the post.
Of course.
You just expect it to be there every day.
Yeah.
And when I read it, I found some most interesting stories in it. But that's the setup to it as to what Linda then said. I said, well, Linda, what you're going to have to do is get all the people that are interested organised.
Yeah.
So we set up a little publishing committee, which has been held in their own family home up in Liscra Heights. What do you call Liscra?
Listrum Court.
Listrum Court, yes.
Listrum Court.
You didn't have too much convincing to do.
Oh no, I didn't. It was something I wanted. I knew all the work that had gone into it.
And it was Sean who wrote the stuff himself.
He did, yes. Initially, some of his work colleagues were gathering bits of information, and this has been over a good number of years. But it's only really, the later years, it was all put together by himself, and with added research and everything. So.
And did it kind of take over the kitchen table for a time?
Well, not the kitchen table, but the main sitting room was a no-go area for anything. Between the book and the Irish classes, I didn't.
Where did the love of Irish come from that he so eloquently passed on to Michael here and encouraged Michael in?
I don't really know. I mean, because he was in England for a number of years where he met me and wanted to come home. He came home, and we initially went to classes in Warren Point. He'd done it at the Abbey, and of course it was only when he started with these classes, so I knew that this is too slow for me. So I plodded away at the classes, and he just came home and he worked away himself. And that's what he's done ever since. That was 1980, and he just kept on going.
It was a big loss for you.
Oh, it was. I mean, in many ways.
Quite unexpected as well, I suppose, when it happened.
Well, it's one of those things, we knew he wasn't well.
Yes.
But it's still unexpected when it actually comes to it. Yeah.
Michael, indeed the folk were coming to the right person, because you have the treasures of the O'Fee Library to your credit and the Book of Newry to your credit. And is this going to be a similar tome?
No, it's not. It's the subject is not as wide as that, nor would the circulation be expected to be that. But in those other publications we printed like 3,000 and 4,000 copies. Most local history books in a narrow subject are lucky to dispose of 400 to 500 books.
Yes.
And you meet people in history societies and they'll open the wardrobe in the house
coming
and
down with them
200 copies of something they printed 25 years ago. So it's not to be on that same scale, but one of the aspects of those other two books employing straight away, and that is the idea of pre-subscribers.
Yes.
So the necessity of getting like a family committee together was to say we need to start marshalling people to have this book bought and their names inscribed in it.
Absolutely.
So we've set ourselves a target of about 500 pre-subscriptions, and we're going to print about 750 copies.
Yeah.
And it's all containable in cost-wise.
Yes.
Like those other two books were like tens of thousands of pounds.
Of course, they would be.
In production.
I know.
What we're talking about here is something that'll cost about 5,000 to 7,000.
Yeah.
So what we need is just to sell at least 500 copies of it.
Yeah.
So the scale of it was all taken back because the subject is narrower. But the rest of the process is the same. Only the one difference this time is I'm glad Sean has already written all this, whereas in those other two, I had to do Sean's work.
Of course.
Compile it, get contributors, write bits myself and so on.
Yeah.
But Sean has it done. And
go ahead.
He's uncovered some wonderful stories that you would think there's nothing interesting ever happened around the post office.
Really? Give us a flavour, some hint.
There's one of them, there's a man, whenever telegrams come in, there's a man who was convicted who was an employee in the Newry post office at the time of selling the copies of the telegrams to a businessman in the town.
My goodness. Yeah.
So the businessman could keep track of everybody else's business. And the boy in the post office was bringing him out copies of telegrams. and that spoiled the whole book. But
No.
Another great one, I'll give you a snippet of it. Around about 1900, there was a fella in the post office, and you know what he did? He got these two boys who were punters. He got them a stamp from the post office, and whenever the races were over in Scotland, say at 4 o'clock in the evening, the two boys wrote their bets out, and the fella in Newry stamped them in the post office as if they had been sent in the post before the race started.
Oh my God! Yes.
Right?
Rogues.
These stories come out. You see,
Rogues.
Once you start going back and looking at the newspaper for Newry post office and so on like that.
In general terms,
we snippets like that are very local.
In general terms, Michael,
Yeah.
the the putting together of the book by Sean, was he right up to the mark? Was it? Did it
Yes,
flow?
I have. You're making me confess in front of Helen here, but I did go back over all the sources.
Yes.
And check out where's he getting this from, and why
Yes.
why did they say that? And I've read the history of the post office from other people's angles, and what I see he's done is he has got all the right sources, and he went to visit all the archives that he could find. He went to the post office archives. He's gone down to Prony. He's been over in the Irish Studies in Armagh, and he has recorded all that. He just hasn't sat in the corner in the house and says, "Oh, I think I'll read a book and then I'll paraphrase it." No, he's gone back to the sources, and that's what was so impressive when Linda first gave it to me. I just looked and said, "The amount of work this man has done."
Yes, yes.
And Helen brings out the point there is it's said that Sean did this in the period that he was sick, but actually he didn't. It was going on for the 10 years beforehand.
My goodness.
Yeah, and it was just when he
Constancy.
was sick, he knew he was sick and he wanted to tie it up.
Yeah.
But that's why he really stopped when the sorting office moved into Clanrye Avenue.
Yes.
Because he just hadn't the energy to carry it on any further.
Apart from anything else, would one want to write anything about a tin shed?
Well,
I
this is
suppose,
it.
it's,
A leaky tin
the
shed.
heart and the spirit and the soul had disappeared when Hill Street went there, other things.
Well, that's the public aspect of it. But what I reckon we had to do to make it the book a seller is to also keep in the nostalgia aspect of it. And I'm sick to so and tired coming out with this definition. Nostalgia is things that people remember and have fondness for, and history are facts and things that occurred and whatever. So whenever I saw it first, there was a lot of photographs of football teams and people working together. So what to say to do from a design point of view is to separate the nostalgia from the history.
Yes, yes.
So the nostalgia part does relate to Clanrye Avenue.
Yes, of course.
Because there's an enormous camaraderie amongst them.
Because they carried with them that which was felt could not be done. The attitudes and the spirit and the camaraderie of Hill Street that came out from the granite, through the granite portals of Hill Street, and they took it out here. So it demonstrated, in a sense, although what I've said, but it demonstrated that it was about more than stones, that it was about people.
Yeah, well, that's quite a lot of the nostalgia part is that, but in the history part of it, he also has family histories of people who were the postmasters, because, you know, when a town was small, what they'd often say is that no matter what town you came from, there was the parish priest and the headmaster in the primary school. And then you looked around you, the postmaster.
Postmaster, indeed.
These were all highly important jobs.
Yeah.
So he has, in the older, in the historical parts of that, picked out who the postmasters were.
Yes.
And where they carried on the post office. It wasn't always in that same place in Hill Street. So he's traced all that as to where it was.
Helen, he rose within the post office to be a postman.
Yes, that's
the
all.
The honourable title, and that's all he ever wanted to be.
That's it. He didn't like the traditional office job.
No.
You know, didn't like to be indoors all the time. So it suited him just being able to go.
And would he, around the dinner table at night when he came back home again, where do you hear what happened today, darling?
But very often,
There
yes.
have been
And a lot of it you couldn't repeat, but yes, he would. Yeah, I think you're bound to just being out and about in the town.
Of course. There was a moment of a most awful occurrence at Clanrye Avenue.
Yes.
When a young man from Camlock, who was a worker in the post office, was shot dead at his job, minding his own business, doing his day's work. How did he respond to that? What did that do to him?
I remember the day it happened, because he arrived home a lot earlier than usual, and I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't had the radio on.
Yes.
And I said, "What's wrong?" And you could see by his face, you know, something massive had happened. And he's actually dedicated the book to the memory of Frank, because
Dear Frank.
he was a good friend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how do you reflect that in the book, Michael? How does that event come across?
Well, the point of the dedication, I think, is more soft than loud, because having read it, he refers to that, but and has the pictures of his funeral and so on in it. But he didn't make any other great comment on it. I didn't.
No, he didn't want to make the book all about the Troubles or,
yes,
or whatever.
Course, yeah.
But obviously they had to be mentioned, and you know, but it wasn't a book about the Troubles.
No.
Yeah, there's an aspect of it there, sort of loath to say it, but I have to say it. The more I read this, I realised that when we say everybody's a postman, they're actually all officers of the Crown.
Ah.
Yeah.
As postman.
As postmen.
Yes, automatically
it's
so.
the Queen's Royal Mail.
It is, of course.
And they're all officers of it.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that's typical Northern Ireland here. We can draw lines around things. That's a policeman. He's got a crown. He's different. He's a postman. He's got the crown. But we'll let the postman come in.
Yeah.
You hope he's bringing you good news.
He's bringing the dough check.
And there's a yeah, I like that. There's a sentence. Mr. Moore died from his injuries, and Miss Moore was badly bruised.
Yeah.
What was that about?
That was an accident. He was Mr. Moore was the postmaster.
Postmaster.
And they were coming down in a horse-drawn carriage down the Dublin Road, and the horse bolted, and they crashed in effect, and he died from his injuries, and she was badly bruised.
And the piece of writing in the book captures it magnificently. The horse, a spirited animal, became unmanageable, and on approaching town by the Dublin Road, his pace became furious. On nearing the bridge, one of the wheels ran over a heap of stones, and both Mr. and Miss Moore were violently thrown out and lay senseless in the road. Goodness gracious.
I love some of the language, you know, from old newspaper cuttings, or, you know, it's language we wouldn't use today.
And Helen, had Sean ever written anything previously?
No, he'd done things to do with the Irish language, not a book per se. He'd made out a course and all the rest of it, which a lot of the classes for the adults now are based on. But he never actually wrote a book, you know.
The love of the Irish language, he was taught at the Abbey, maybe he got it there. But was there a fallow time when he wasn't involved in the language, but suddenly it flowered again? It
was really only from the time he came back home to Newry. That seemed to reignite his interest, and he just, well, he was self-taught in effect, but he ended up, he was teaching people who had university degrees and all sorts. Yeah,
he's a lovely man. He's a happy man. Do you remember him, Michael? Because he came into you. You were making the point you would cross the road to meet him.
I couldn't believe it when I heard he had died. Yes. How did it happen? The last time I saw him, he was in the street there, and I was talking to him. I can nearly remember the word. It was go flushach, which means plentiful or whatever, you know.
He was giving me that.
And we were talking about this word, and he was teaching me to pronounce it properly and so on, you know. And the next thing, Linda stand in front of me saying, Sean's written this book before he died.
My goodness.
You know? But it was always that way. I couldn't ever imagine him being other than cheery and whatever, because he was walking about the street every day of the week like this.
Michael, you have embraced the work. Now, it's no mean feat to produce a book like this. You've taken it on as a project to which you will put your name as an associate of it.
Yeah,
it's a mighty thing to do, is it not?
Oh, it is, and I will say, without Michael's help, I don't know. Well, I wouldn't have known where to start. So he sort of pushes you in the right direction, and has all the contacts, you know, to help us.
The publisher, Michael, who's publishing it?
Well, we're publishing it ourselves, literally, because you see, when we did the Book of Newry, myself and Jerry Murphy and Francis Gallagher set up Old Newry Publications Limited.
Yes.
And they we'll just use the same entity. And that's time I had to buy so many ISBN numbers and so on. So we actually have a publishing company, and every year I still send in the returns for the company. I did it mainly in case anybody ever sued us for libel. What do you call it? So the same thing applies. We'll use that company. So it'll come out appropriately under the old Newry publications because it's about Newry Post Office.
Of course. But Newry is, for an Armagh man, Newry has come to rest deep in your heart.
Yeah, I can't remember the distinctions any longer. And I often say to people from Armagh, what county are you from? And I said Armagh, and then they say, where do you live? I says, in the Warren Point Road in Newry. Anything that widens out our knowledge of Newry at different times is what's of interest to me.
Yes.
And there's a whole aspect of this about a Newry type thing as well. Ron, maybe it's a good time not to give you the whole of the book, but to put more space into it.
Yes.
There's a whole section in here that Sean has about highwaymen.
Highwaymen. Wow.
Which is, you think, what's that got to do with the post office? But
possibly everything.
Everything, because the mail coaches were coming up and down the road, and it conjures up.
Deliver.
But it comes up immediately that song, the Newry Highwayman.
Yes.
It's a traditional song, and as a result of it, I have been indulged myself in old books about Redmond O'Hanlon and Mayhull Murphy Moore, etc., so as to see the context of this. Yeah. But that's you've asked me about the Newry aspect of it, but it's that regional thing here about the valley between here and Dundalk, up by Flagstaff and across, and all that flavour comes into it. And the reason I mention all this is because Newry is so rich. The history around Newry is so rich. Everything, from the post office stories, the railway stories, the canal stories, and all of these things crisscross into it. And I was desperately interested in reading all this about the post office because I could then transpose that onto. I wonder how the Carvilles sent their letters and what
back from America.
Yeah, and so on. Did they bring letters, and was that part of it? And he has a section about that called ship's letters. There was an idea called a ship letter.
Wow.
That the ship
equivalent to airmail in those days.
Before the post office got regulated, and so many interesting bits to it. But the idea of bringing that up through that history of the transport of communications, and where I was trying to bring you to there was the idea of
the ship's letter.
Of a ship's letter, but Newry also being central. There's 37 sub-post offices in Newry.
My goodness. 37?
Yeah.
Not still. Possibly not.
I don't know. Well, some have been closed.
Some have been closed
in recent years, but there's still a good number.
Newry was the post office from Castle Blaney across to Newcastle.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. And your front page photograph here, it's bringing me back to something I never thought I'd see again on a building. VR, Victoria Regina. She was the queen at the time.
The queen.
Yes.
And of course, we have the Victoria Lock in Newry.
Yeah. We actually have a VR post box.
Still.
It's not in use. It's on the hallway in the museum. If you go up into the museum.
Yes.
But an additional thing we've done, which is not Sean's work, but we've decided that we'll try it. We haven't put it in the book yet. Is we've had commissioned a young man to go around the whole countryside and take a photograph of every post box.
Could only be you, Michael. Only you, I tell you. That is, it's very good. Well done, sir. Well done. I think that's lovely.
What we're thinking of is if it doesn't suit the design, I'll have to go again. But I'll tell you in the next few days after I see the design attempts on it. Yeah. But the idea was that it would have the post box and glancing picture down a roadway. And then would be put in the book without saying where they were.
Yes.
So when the reader was looking at it, they'd say, where's that there?
Oh.
And you would actually become aware there's post boxes in place you never knew.
Oh, there's one out on my daughter's road in Glen, and it's the road is called Lisserboy Road.
Yes.
And it's on the corner, it's out at the 4 Mile in Glen. And if you're coming to it, You go around, and it's tucked in, leaning into a hedge backways. And to see that in winter time, surrounded by snow.
Yes, it's like the Christmas card.
I know.
It really, really is.
Yeah, well,
So
it might work that, that's an embellishment of it.
We need to tell the people now how they pre-subscribe,
yes.
which is important. Shall we do that?
Hi. Well, Helen, you do that, but...
Helen, over to you, dear girl.
Right. Well, they can either go online and follow the links. I need my glasses for that, I'm afraid.
It's the Book of Newry.
Yes.
www.thebookofnewry, all one word, .com, thebookofnewry.com/post office. So when you get to the bookofnewry.com site, you should see a button saying post office. And then you can go in there, put your name and address and all in, and push the button for credit card, PayPal, whatever, So we have everything in this organisation.
It's unbelievable. I'm so grateful.
That's one way. Or the other way is that Helen's address, you can just send her the money and just send you back the form. And the pre-subscription is £15.
Wow.
And she's at Helen McKevitt at 4 Listrum Court, BT35 8BB.
There you have it. But don't forget, you
have a Facebook page as well.
Wow, what is that? Tell them that.
What is it? Linda's Facebook, is she?
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
Oh, we came on prepared.
That's good, isn't it?
Facebook's have nothing to do with the post office, but it's good that you're using the new technology.
Go to bookofnewry.com.
Bookofnewry.com and you'll find the way forward. Bookofnewry.com.
In fact, I think we should say we're going to make this a limited edition.
Why wouldn't you?
If you don't get in here quick, you
Yes.
not be allowed in.
Hurry up.
Didn't
I
I
think
think
the other
just
thing is hopefully your postman will be able to tell you.
yeah,
own postman. So we'll make sure they all have the leaflets.
Well, shall we finish our chat with just a few words about the lovely man, Sean McKevitt, happy man, who you met many years ago?
Well, we would have been married 40 years this coming August, and we met, I suppose, about 3 years before that. So I would,
How did you meet?
In England. He left Newry because that was the late 60s. There was no work, So
When
he
did
was
eyes meet across a crowded room?
Would you believe in a pub?
That's lovely. Well, you're womanfully dealing with your loss, and we offer you congratulations on the book. You're in good hands with Michael, and Michael, once again, you have put your caring arms around a project that is of value to Newry, and well done to both of you. Thank you very, very much indeed. You're with Destination Newry. It is the morning programme. I'm going to close the programme. Maybe you'll stay with us until the end of the programme. So that our time is run. I will be back with you tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. More of the same, or something similar, from my rattle bag of eclectic dolly mixtures of news and music and musings. That's it, not music. So it'll be back tomorrow, inshallah, please God.